Hello everyone, welcome aboard. So today we present you the first lecture of Polity. It's actually second lecture. So in the last lecture we saw the evolution of Indian Constitution. So what were the landmark acts which were passed during the colonial administration, and today we are going to take a look at the making of our constitution. So let's get started. So if we go in the pre-independence era, there were some developments which were related to the constitutional development. Like first of all, there was a challenge by Lord Birkenhead in 1927 to all India leadership that Indians are not fit to frame a rule for themselves. Yes, so that was the challenge which was thrown by a British politician, which was taken up by all the Indian leadership. And under the leadership of Motilal Nehru, we prepared a Nehru report in the year 1928. Then M.N. Roy, a communist leader, he was one of the pioneer to throw the idea of a constituent assembly, or demand for the constituent assembly was first thrown up by M.N. Roy in 1934. Indian National Congress included the demand of constituent assembly in 1935. August offer, which was given in 1940 after the beginning of the Second World War, and actually it was an offer in order to gather the support of Indians towards the side of the Britishers in the war effort. They gave in principle approval for creation of Constituent Assembly. In 1942, Cripps mission came, and it had for the first time a proposal related to creation of Constituent Assembly, but because of failure of Cripps mission, it couldn't be materialized. And finally, the cabinet mission, which came in 1946 and proposed the creation of Constituent Assembly and a scheme for election of the Constituent Assembly members for that purpose, that was finally accepted, and the Constituent Assembly of India was made on the scheme given by cabinet mission. So this is one of the first question which can be framed. So actually, if you see, all of this can be a question, like asking about who was the pioneer, M.N. Roy, which year INC included the demand of the Constituent Assembly permanently, when August offer, and whether it was related to the demand of the Constitution, when Cripps mission and its proposal to create a Constituent Assembly where majority of members will be Indians, and cabinet mission plan which allowed for a creation of Constituent Assembly where all the members will be Indians. So now let's move ahead to our Constituent Assembly, which was based on the scheme provided by cabinet mission plan. So total number of seats in the Constituent Assembly was 389, out of which 296 seats were allotted to British India. British India represented those provinces which were directly under the British rule, let's say United Province or Central Province during that time. Then princely states refer to those areas which were under the control of kings and princes and who were under the British paramountcy. So to those states, 93 seats were allotted. The ratio of seat to the population was 1 to 1 million, or for every 10 lakh people, one seat was allotted in the Constituent Assembly. So a lot of time even this has been asked. Then there was a reservation in proportion to the population of the communities like Muslims and Sikhs, and rest all the persons were kept in one community, that was general. Then the people from British India, they were indirectly elected. So remember guys, this is a question which is asked a lot of times, that from British India, the members of Constituent Assembly were elected by the members of legislative assemblies. Okay, so actually they were indirectly elected by the people, whereas in case of princely states they were nominated. So thus we can say that Constituent Assembly of India was partially elected and partially nominated. The elected portion also, it was having indirect representation, and the nominated people were nominated by the kings of princely states of India. Okay. So let's move ahead to the working of the Constituent Assembly. So the Constituent Assembly of India was formed on the scheme provided by the Cabinet Mission, and it was partially elected and partially nominated body which conducted its first meeting on 9th December 1946. Yes, and on that day the temporary presidentship was given to Sachidanand Sinha, who was the senior most member of the Constituent Assembly following the French practice. Just after 2 days, Dr. Rajendra Prasad, he was appointed as the president of the Constituent Assembly on 11th December. H.C. Mukherjee was appointed as the vice president of the Constituent Assembly, and Sir B.N. Rao was appointed as constitutional advisor to the Constituent Assembly. Each of the details we have mentioned here can be asked in a form of question. Okay. Now let's see. So 9th December Constituent Assembly meets for the first time. 11th, it decides who is going to chair the meetings, who will be various functionaries of the Constituent Assembly. And after 2 more days, on 13th December, something called as objective resolution was moved by Jawaharlal Nehru. So this objective resolution laid down the fundamental philosophy of the constitutional structure. So remember, it's not that this itself laid ground for the entire constitutional details, but on a generic scale, what is the duty of this Constituent Assembly? What is our guiding path? These points were mentioned by Jawaharlal Nehru in the objective resolution. It was unanimously adopted on 22nd January 1947. Okay, please remember this date as well. And it influenced the shaping of Indian Constitution, and its modified version reflects in the preamble of the Constitution. Okay. So the easiest question on this topic can be as easy as the objective resolution was moved by whom, or what was the date when it was moved, or when it was adopted. Moving ahead. So if we see, we just saw the dates that the first time when Constituent Assembly met was 9th December 1946. And we all know that India got independence on 15th August 1947. So Indian Independence Act, which was passed for that purpose, brought some changes in the stature of the Constituent Assembly. Let us see those. So once the Indian Independence Act was passed, the Constituent Assembly became the fully sovereign body. So even Britishers or anybody else for that matter was having no control or superior say in the matters or decisions of Constituent Assembly. Apart from making the constitution, which was its primary objective, it also became the first mini parliament for India. So constitution itself, which will be developed by the Constituent Assembly, will decide when the election will happen, how the election will happen, and then only you can have a legislature. So by that time, the Constituent Assembly acted as a mini parliament or legislature of India. So interestingly, when this group of people, Constituent Assembly, they met as a constitutional making body, then this was chaired by Dr. Rajendra Prasad, and when it met as a legislative body, then it was presided by Mr. G.V. Mavlankar, who was the first speaker of independent India. Also, the Indian Independence Act created two dominions of India and Pakistan. So that's why Muslim League withdrew from this, and the strength of the assembly originally, which was 389, came down to 299. Now, some other functions apart from the making of constitution as well as working as the mini parliament of India, which were performed by the Constituent Assembly of India, was it adopted the national flag on July 22nd, 1947. So see, national flag will be required when we have to unfurl it or hoist it on 15th August. That's why before that, July 22nd, 1947, this Constituent Assembly adopted the national flag for India. National anthem and national song, both the things were adopted on 24th January 1950, 2 days before the first Republic Day or before the enactment of the Constitution. And on the same day, it also elected Dr. Rajendra Prasad as the first president of India. Please remember these dates, they are important. Time and again, we have seen them in the question papers. Now, the total time taken by the Constituent Assembly to complete the making of the Constitution was 2 years, 11 months, and 18 days. The total budget or expenditure which came on the making of Constitution was 64 lakhs. This making up of the Constitution was achieved in a sitting of 11 sessions, and that 11th final session was held on 24th January 1950. Okay, and 26th January 1950, as we all know, is the date of the enactment of the Constitution. Now, there were some major committees. So, as we see now, also the Parliament functions through a lot of parliamentary committees. Similarly, the big task of this Constituent Assembly was divided into small segments, and they were given as a responsibility to various committees. So there were 8 major committees which are very, very important, and every now and then they keep coming in the examinations. So we have to remember the name of the committee plus it was chaired by whom. So Union Power Committee, the power of the Union government, and the Union Constitution Committee. The constitutional provisions related to the Union government was chaired by Nehru. Provincial Constitutional Committee, that was chaired by Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel. The drafting committee, the very popular one, was chaired by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. Advisory Committee on the Fundamental Rights, Minorities and Tribal Areas was headed by Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel. Rules of Procedure Committee was headed by Dr. Rajendra Prasad. We all know he was the chairman of the committee as well, chairman of the Constituent Assembly itself. The Committee on States was headed by Nehru. So guys, pay attention. The Provincial Constitutional Committee was headed by Patel. States Committee was headed by Jawaharlal Nehru. And Steering Committee was again headed by Dr. Rajendra Prasad. Now let's take a look at the members of the drafting committee. So all in all, there were 7 members. Very important. We should remember each one of them. So this drafting committee having 7 members was headed by Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar, who was the chairman and called as father of the Indian Constitution and modern Manu. The other members were N. Gopalaswamy Iyengar and Alladi Krishnaswamy Iyer, Dr. K. M. Munshi, Sayyid Muhammad Sadullah, N. Madhav Rao, and T. T. Krishnamachari. So please try to remember all these 7 names. They can be given in the 4 options, and you can be asked in the question which one of these were not part of the drafting committee of the Constituent Assembly. Now let's see the enforcement of the Constitution of India. So remember this one thing, guys, and we will see this again when we'll be discussing the chapter on preamble. The date of adoption of the Constitution, as mentioned on its preamble, is 26th November 1949. That's the time when 10th sitting happened and everybody adopted the Constitution or final draft. On that day itself, the short title of the Constitution, the mechanism of election, provisional parliament, and temporary provisions came into force. The full complete Constitution, although, was enacted by 26th January 1950, when the remaining constitution came into force. So please remember, the date of adoption of the constitution is 26th November 1949, whereas the date of enactment of the constitution is 26th January 1950. So let's take a look at some of the criticisms of the Constituent Assembly of India. A lot of people said that it is not a representative body because, if you remember, that some of its members were nominated by the kings or princes. Then some people said in the beginning it was not a sovereign body because it was made at the scheme of cabinet mission, and it conducted its meetings in the beginning or prior to independence period under the British permission. Then it took a lot of time, as we saw, 2 years, 11 months and 18 days in order to prepare constitution. So yes, it was criticized for being too much time consuming. It was majorly dominated by Congress. So Congress at that time represented all the sections of the society, and it was the major Indian party in power. So it was true, but the sense that it was belonging to one particular political ideology is wrong. Then it was a lawyer politician dominated. Yes, that was true, and that's why even a lot of terms which are too much complex or legal in nature that you find in the constitution. Napoleon once said that the constitution has to be so much simple and short that it can be carried in a pocket. But our constitution is just opposite to that because of the nomination of lawyers and politicians in the Constituent Assembly. Then it was dominated by Hindus. That's what some people have to criticize. But as we have seen, that it got representations from the various sections of the society which belongs to all the religions. So that was the details about, about these slides. That was the details of making of Indian Constitution. Hope you liked the lecture. Please go through some of the do's and don'ts and try to follow them in order to maximize your chances of selection in the civil services exam. Stay tuned for the next lectures, which will be coming to you shortly. Thanks for joining. Thank you very much.